morning, chat. I'm back. Glad to see you all back too. Today, gonna do something a little different. Apparently there's been big developments in a lot of the game industry drama, and I thought that could be something fun to talk about. Partially because there's definitely some context missing in a few spots in the discussion, some technical knowledge missing in a few places as well, and thought it might be something useful to discuss. But while all the sleepyheads are taking their time getting in here, let's do our usual. Let's do a startup. Boop-a-boop. There we go. Am I not hearing this, or... Okay, good. It is working, it's just very quiet intro. There we go. Let's see. So, in gaming, just general news of the games we play on stream. Oh no. Oh no. Please be small. Oh no! I've failed. I could have sworn I kept everything up to date. Hey there, Soul Warding. How's it going? Let's see, I can go ahead and get some of the other stuff pulled up. So one of the big topics today is going to be Stop Killing Games, because I hadn't talked about that at all on stream. And I think there's a lot of polarization happening there, at least that's what I'm seeing in my social feeds. And I think there are possibly the worst communicators on both sides of that, and that's not helping anyone. How's it going? I am awesome, having had basically 2 weeks off. Yeah, 2 weeks off. Had a little chaos at the start of my vacation with my mechanics giving me mixed information, my car maybe being broken but wasn't actually, and then several potential life risks on the drive back. Yeah, I hit some of the craziest weather to drive through I've ever been in, and because of the specifics of the situation, I couldn't like pull off the side of the road, so it was basically just turn all the lights on the car on and follow the flashing light in front of me and pray. That's all I could do. So it was eventful, but other than the start and finish of the vacation, it was awesome. Let's see, so there's the Stop Killing Games topic that we'll talk about probably quite a bit. And then also new developments that are not like breaking news at this point, but the Palworld lawsuit with Nintendo. Things have happened in that I wanted to discuss with people, because there's a lot, as with anything that happens in lawfare worldwide, everyone tries to apply, or at least most people from the US try to apply US law and principles, or at the very least the more general common law principles, to legal actions happening in Japan, which is just not applicable. And I'm absolutely going to be coming at this from a perspective of someone who does not know Japanese law. So be warned, I am not providing any sort of legal expertise in talking about it. Just, we're going to talk about the shenanigans. Right? What do you mean I'm out of available space? What do you mean? Oops. We'll just uninstall some stuff. That's fine, right? What else can I get rid of? Probably all I want to get rid of right now. Is that enough? Why is this update so massive? What happened? Fine, let's we'll get rid of this. That playthrough's been kind of boring anyway. Was that enough? I don't think so. Yeah, no. Okay, then if we want to do Dark Souls 3 again at some point, I'll reinstall it. I really wish that these games would do... They need to like chunk their updates, because it's not actually adding 60 gigabytes to my disk. What's happening is almost 99% of that is going to be overwrites. So just do it in like 5 gig chunks. Please. I beg you. Anyway. Let's see. We can maybe start on the basics of Stop Killing Games. Because in case you haven't been paying attention to this, since it's a strictly European Union initiative, not directly relevant to the United States or, you know, any non-European countries. Let's go over the basics. What is Stop Killing Games? So, and in an attempt to represent them, I'm going to just go based off of how they represent themselves, and we'll venture out from there. Because who knows, maybe they're all a bunch of liars. Maybe. Maybe not. So, Stop Killing Games is a consumer movement started to challenge the legality of publishers destroying video games they have sold to customers. Well, that already sounds a little not true, but okay. An increasing number of video games are sold effectively as goods with no... Okay. That doesn't mean anything new, with no stated expiration date, but designed to be completely unplayable as soon as support from the publisher ends. Yes, we know how live service works. This practice is a form of planned obsolescence and is not only detrimental to customers, but makes preservation effectively impossible. Furthermore, the legality of this practice is largely untested in many countries. So, right off the bat, we're only paying attention to what they say about themselves, right? And already, there's, frankly, lies here. And I want to be upfront about my view, my general view on Stop Killing Games. I think there is absolutely a problem in the game industry, and I think there are a lot of people that are part of Stop Killing Games that absolutely want to try and fix some of these problems. I also think that this initiative on its own is probably too heavy-handed in some areas, but I want to get into that. And right off the bat, this is poisoning the well big time. And maybe for petitioning efforts, that's something that's okay. I wouldn't do it, but this practice is a form of planned obsolescence. Majority of the time, no, it's not. Majority of the time, this is strictly down to commercial viability. So you have a live service game, it takes servers to run that stuff. You're spending money on it. If you're not having income that is greater than what you're spending on those servers, it's a loss. It's no longer commercially viable. You need to adjust as a company. Like, if I, Dum Dum, decided to make a live service game, I would have to pay for servers. And I'm a small business. If those server costs are larger than what the game is making, I can't afford to keep that going. So it's not that I planned the obsolescence, it's that, and let's even say maybe I made a crappy game. That's absolutely possible. Okay, well, I didn't plan for the game to fail. I absolutely tried to succeed in this hypothetical. But I failed. And as a result, I can't make money with it, so is the answer here something along the lines of, well, you have to support the game anyway? I know that that's not what they're actually going to propose here, but this description, I don't like misleading in this way. Now, are there some bad companies that are doing this exactly? 100%. 100%. I have no doubt that there are games that the developers have planned from the get-go, and almost certainly provoked by, or I shouldn't say provoked, pushed by publishers to do this, to have games that they know are going to be destroyed, as they're describing it here. Let's see. Over the past few years, we have successfully escalated complaints on this problem to consumer agencies in France, Germany, and Australia, and have brought forth petitions for new law on this problem to various countries. A list of actions taken to date can be viewed here. Considering we're focused on the current petition in the European Union, I don't know that this is going to help us too much. If I'm struggling with some context, we may go back to this. Let me go ahead and put it in a tab. As of 2025, most consumer action on this matter has concluded, and we are awaiting decisions on it from several governments. However, there are a few remaining avenues left where people can participate if they are eligible. So as far as the EU petition, they hit their goal a while back of 1 million signatures, which I believe is the requirement to force it to be at least discussed at the European Union. I don't remember the rules around this, but it's something along the lines of, if you reach a certain number of signatures, you get additional exposure within the European Union for whatever it is you want discussed. So clearly they've got one going in the UK. Oh yeah, and there's also, of course, the whole issue of the game The Crew, which I have not read up on that situation at all. I'm not going to be able to talk on it, so if you wanted specifics on that, sorry, I can't help right now. Let's see. We're doing fundraising, that's fine. Big initiatives like this need money. So what is the EU petition? Video games are being destroyed! Oh no! Stop it. This So the way they're communicating through their main site already has me, Dum going, I don't trust you. You aren't talking to me on equal terms here. Let's see. Most video games work indefinitely. True. But a growing number are designed to stop working as soon as publishers end support. Again, they're like, server-based games die. It happens. This effectively robs customers, destroys games as an art form. This statement doesn't make any sense. So this effectively robs customers. Some instances of this, I agree. So, for example, a single-player game with always online DRM, you shut down the servers. I agree. That is almost certainly an example of studios robbing customers. Destroys games as an art form. That's just hyperbolic nonsense. This, like, if there were no offline games being produced, and by the way, the overwhelming majority of games being produced are absolutely playable without servers right now. Partially because the indie development scene, you know, I'm here as part of this phenomenon, has grown so much that the indie scene is actively threatening the commercial viability of AAA publishers. This has been a somewhat recently recognized phenomenon. It's been going on. Like, anyone who's been in the gaming space over the past decade has known, yeah, this is coming. Well, it's finally had so much of an impact that major publishers are starting to recognize it, talk about it, and pay for articles to be written about it. And I've seen a number of articles with people saying how, oh, it's very dangerous to have all these indie games because then people aren't buying the AAA games, and that could mean that they can't hire as many developers to work in absolutely horrible hours and conditions. Yeah. Now, the one place that I knew I never wanted to go in software development is games development, because the fact that they are almost perpetually in crunch time with most studios, like, it's not healthy what happens in that industry. So, but recircling back to this petition, destroys games as an art form. You can't destroy an art form other than something radical like legal action to ban video games altogether, right? Like, in theory, you could do something like that, but the actions of an individual corporation, as long as they are not impacting the legal system or in the country or world, they aren't destroying games as an art form. Okay. He's like, stop killing games. Please stop being hyperbolic. You have an extremely strong case. You are weakening your case by being hyperbolic. And is unnecessary. So, for certain types of games, they are 100% correct. For always online DRM stuff, absolutely it is unnecessary. Now, MMORPGs is the big counterexample here. How do you avoid this as a company? Because MMOs pop up, they have a stretch of being popular and being profitable, they stop being profitable, they get shut down. This has happened hundreds of times with hundreds of MMOs. Our movement seeks to pass new law in the EU to put an end to this practice. Our proposal would do the following. Require video games sold to remain in a working state when support ends. Okay, devil's in the details, my dudes. This one sounds terrifying to me. Because... oh boy! For example, let's say I produce a game, and let's just pretend I was producing a game back on Windows XP. Well, there's a whole bunch of games from that era that are not playable on modern hardware. Now, emulation work has definitely advanced in that area, and most of them have been revived. But where does liability lie for this? So, if I produce a game and Windows or Microsoft releases an update that makes my game no longer work, who's responsible for fixing that? That's super important, because this now means that, depending on how you decide this, every time Microsoft puts out an update that breaks my game, I'm now required to go fix it, even if this is a game that I published, a decade ago. Like, this needs to be analyzed on a long time scale. A lot of people are looking at this and saying, oh, well, publishers are creating these horrible systems for stealing games from the people who bought them. Absolutely, that's a problem. Always, always, always look at the unintended consequences of introducing new law, because it will absolutely end up being used outside of the way that you planned. 100%. And I don't think there's many examples of that not happening. Like, laws do not just get applied as intended. Require no connection to the publisher after support date, or after support ends. Depending on what this means, does this mean MMOs are no longer allowed? Like, I need to know, does this mean online multiplayer games just can't exist anymore? Is that what that means? Not interfere with any business practices while the game is still being... wait. Not interfere with any business practices while a game is still being supported. So this is... so the fact that you are requiring things of publishers... hey there, Symbol. How's it going? The fact that you're requiring things of publishers and developers means that whether you want to or not, you are interfering with business practices. You have placed a restriction on business practices. End of story. You don't get to say, oh, we want all these things. Like, this is turning into a genie wish list. Like, in case you haven't seen the videos on YouTube where you have someone trying to construct a wish that a genie can't twist into something negative. Like, I guess I should also describe for people who aren't familiar with the concept of genies in this context. So, the classical concept of a genie is a wish-granting entity that, when you give them a wish, they twist it to not actually be what you want. On YouTube, there's a whole bunch of joke skits about people trying to construct perfect wishes that can't be twisted. Well, this is kind of like that. Hey, I want video games to never stop working. Okay, that's great. I'm glad you want that. Require no connection to the publisher after support ends. Okay, well, you're definitely having an impact on business practices there. Not interfere with business practices. How? How? Symbol. The second point is mainly to mean that once the game is no longer supported, that they allow players to continue to play the game in a state where the game doesn't connect to a company server. So like an offline mode or private servers. They need to say that. In your opinion, this is a poorly written and badly explained initiative. I agree, 100%. And that's, before you got here, that was kind of my starting point of these guys are terrible at communicating. Like, absolutely terrible. And I agree with them that there is a massive problem in the games industry. But this ain't it, Chief. This ain't it. So we've only talked about like their headline statement of here's what we're doing, and I already have massive problems with it. Let's see. Are we gonna go through the whole petition today? I don't know. What is this? Objectives, annex, organizers. What's this? And we're just getting link after link after link. And this is a big part of the problem here, is that we got one communication here. We have potentially a different communication here. And then potentially a different communication here. And finally, I don't even know what this is. Commission implementing decision. Request for registration pursuant to blah blah blah. Title: Stop Destroying Video Games. The European Commission having regard the okay, so this is the response from the European Union about registering the initiative, I guess. Has adopted the decision. Shall be, yeah, okay, so this is the European Union saying, okay, you have the signatures, we are registering you. I think. Oh, wait, this isn't even... I don't think they had the signatures back at this point, so this is prior to even having the signatures. This is just registering the initiative so that they can track their signatures and potentially get things moving if signatures are... if they do get all the signatures they need. Okay. Online collection system. Okay, let's just start here. Let me make this a little bigger for you guys. That last page is just, we have registered your initiative, now please collect enough signatures. Yeah. I'm with you. Let me... Good. This initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers in... Already got a problem here. Sell or license. Interesting. What does that mean? So, if I sell my game through Steam, does that mean Steam is required to do these things? It certainly sounds like it might. To consumers in the European Union, or related features and assets sold for video games they operate. Side note, all video games are licensed. Oh, very, very much so. Fair point. To leave said video games in a functional state. So at least so far, we still have the problem of, and let's just use the strongest counter example. We still have the problem of MMOs, massively multiplayer online games. There's still a problem here. Specifically, the initiative seeks to prevent the remote disabling of video games by the publishers before providing reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement from the side of the publisher. So there's a whole bunch of different ways this can happen. Some are malicious, some are not. You absolutely need to discuss them in detail. The initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games. Well, in the case of MMOs, this appears to be a lie. At least, okay, maybe the initiative itself does not seek to own the video games, but it certainly seeks to transfer ownership of video games. Associated intellectual rights or monetization rights, neither does it expect the publisher to provide resources for the said video game once they discontinue it, while leaving it in a reasonably functional, playable state. Okay. Is this even potentially true? Yeah, the wording is purposefully vague enough to be awful. And in law, you cannot be vague. First of all, in English common law, which is applicable to the UK and the US, I can't speak on European Union in this regard, but there's a similar petition going on in the UK, and under common law, or under English common law, vagueness is a grounds to invalidate a law. So vagueness is the enemy here. And in legal systems where you don't have protection against vagueness, then the law becomes so widely applicable that it will absolutely be used against the people that you think you're protecting. They are specifically saying here that they do not want the source code to be bought or transferred to the initiative or other parties to sustain the game. I get that so they don't actually say or other parties here. So this statement only says that they do not want to end up with the ownership themselves. They have not stated here that they are not seeking the transfer of ownership at all, which they absolutely are seeking transfer of ownership. Any game that requires a server to be online to function properly, you are demanding transfer of ownership. Whether that be transferring to a new publisher that wants to take it on. So with MMOs, this has happened many, many, many times. You have a game developed and published under one company. They don't see it as commercially viable, so they sell it off to a new publisher. They republish it, changing a few features and monetization strategies. Like, that's very, very, very common in the MMO space. Since this is just an initiative, this is just a document asking lawmakers to look into the situation and propose laws. That's a problem, because lawmakers, by and large, when it comes to IT, and even more so video games specifically, are idiots. Absolutely. Like, the number of hearings in Congress I've listened to where it's evident that our congressmen don't understand how email works. The document itself is not a law or should be used directly as law. Absolutely agree. However, you do need to put in a bare minimum amount of analysis here, and I think a part of that bare minimum is making sure the things you're asking for aren't, from a legal perspective, obviously nonsense. Like, just in this document, I've already found one place where it actively contradicts itself. or at the very least is misleading in how it's vague. That's a problem. Because if you want to be taken seriously, you need to account for these things. And specifically, online service games, you are asking for transfer of ownership, and you need to acknowledge that. Oh, there are many contradictions all over the place. That's the problem. Because if I'm a lawmaker, right? From documentation to promotion to talking points, yes, absolutely. And we're going to get into more of that. But put yourself in the position of a lawmaker, okay? You receive an initiative that has all these petitions that people want you to talk about it, and you read over the initiative and go, well, it's contradicting itself. I don't know how I'm supposed to discuss this. I now have to take extra time to go communicate with the organizers of this to figure out what the heck they're talking about. Meanwhile, I have another 100 initiatives on my docket, and all of those are properly documented. So do I want to spend a week going to iron this out? Or do I maybe get through 20 other things on my docket? Like, they're setting themselves up to be deprioritized in legal systems. And then there's the whole first video that the guy was like, why would we do this? Because lawmakers are bored, he said this? And most of the initiative I have seen are as bad as this. And this is my frustration with this, because there is a problem they've identified. There's a massive problem in the games industry where publishers are trying to be able to steal property they have sold. Like, that's a massive problem. And we need an initiative that's better than this to try to solve that problem. Because we are entering a potential hellscape of licensing. Particularly with the most recent updates to terms of service from places like Ubisoft. I think I was reading that the new terms of service has a clause in it, something to the effect of, either party can end this EULA for any reason at all, and when that happens, you as the purchaser are required to destroy any and all copies that in your possession of the product. That's nonsense. That's absolute nonsense, legally speaking. And I'm pretty sure in common law that already can't hold up. So the idea that I buy a license to a piece of software, and then you can, in that agreement, decide that if and keep in mind, violating an EULA is very easy nowadays because they encompass everything. Some of them even stretch as far as if you say something on social media the company doesn't like, they can revoke your access to a game. Like, and so if that happens, Ubisoft is now saying that you have to delete your games, you have to destroy any copies if we say so. Like, they don't even need a reason. They can just point at you and say, delete all the copies, and you agreed to the EULA. Yeah, US common law, and actually there's a ton of case law on this in the US. That would not fly. That doesn't fly for a minute, right? Like, a judge is gonna look at that and just laugh. I mean, just imagine if you bought a toaster at Target. You take that toaster home, it doesn't work, so you write a bad review online, and then the company that made the toaster then says, okay, we're ending our agreement with you. You now have to destroy your toaster. What? What? Ubisoft in the EULA says they need a good and verifiable reason, but Nintendo and Sony are worse. They don't say that. So The latest version I saw from Ubisoft that came out within the past week doesn't say that as part of the termination terms. It specifically says any reason. Does not have to be good, does not have to be verifiable. The reason can literally just be because I said so. Yeah, no, it's their latest attempt at this is absolute nonsense. So this is just sort of trying to carve out that there's a big problem here. There are publishers that are doing shenanigans that should absolutely be illegal. So we need an initiative to combat that. But we don't seek to acquire ownership. That's true, potentially. But you are absolutely asking that rights be transferred. So, problem with that, in international court specifically, if someone is infringing on your copyright and you do not challenge it legally, you lose your copyright. Well, you are proposing a change of ownership. Like, the big example is private servers for MMOs. Well, if Sega's a good example here, where this would become a problem. Sega's in Japan, so not applicable with the EU petition, but let's pretend Sega was an EU company. They released Phantasy Star Online ages ago, and the game was no longer profitable. They shut down the servers. Several years later, private servers pop up. Okay. Sega, under international law, needs to challenge that, or they risk losing copyright to all the material in that game. Keep in mind, that's the Phantasy Star universe. Not the game, but the entire universe of Phantasy Star is potentially lost during that ownership transfer. It's a bit more like, we are removing your license and you cannot access XYZ. In case of a toaster, it's very hard to enforce, but a piece of software that requires internet connection just means you no longer launch the game. Except there are online toasters, so it's not an absurd parallel. Copyright laws regarding IP ownership is going to break this by default. Oh yeah. So US copyright law doesn't break this, as far as I know. But international copyright law cannot jive with this. At all. And so you can't? Is that harder? But, like, I mean, imagine you have a smart house. Like, you need legal protections if you have a smart house. Because if you say something on social media that the company that makes your smart house doesn't like, under the stuff that these publishers are trying to do, the equivalent with a smart house, they could just shut down your house. They could lock you out of your own house. Smart house license problem, it's on YouTube, I'm sure. Oh, I have no doubt, but I don't want to try and bite off that whole issue today as well. Let's see the annex. Video games have grown into an industry with billions of customers. I don't care about that. Stop describing the industry. An increasing number of publishers are selling video games that are required to connect through the internet to the game publisher, or phone home to function. While this is not a problem in itself, while this is not a problem in itself, I'm not sure I agree with that part of this statement, but let's let it go for now. When support ends for these types of games, very often publishers simply sever the connection necessary for the game to function. Very true. Proceed to destroy all working copies of the game. I don't think destroy is the correct term here, and if you're going to use the word destroy, you need to kind of define it. and implement extensive measures to prevent the customer from repairing the game in any way. Well, this is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense, as evidenced by the people making offline cracks for a lot of games like this. Like, extensive measures? No, it's that they didn't do extra work to allow it to work offline, right? Like, a phone home system, which, the more accurate technical term, I believe, is called a liveliness check. It's really, really simple. It's equivalent to a ping. So, like, I want to check yahoo.com. There, I just pinged Yahoo. That is a functional equivalent to a liveliness check. It's, do I get a response from this server? And that's what these phone home systems really are. Sometimes they implement things like license checking, but it's not, quote, extensive measures. Stop loading the language. It's not necessary. This practice is effectively robbing customers of their purchases and makes restoration impossible. As I just mentioned with offline cracks for video games, this is clearly not impossible. Now, it might be a violation of the EULA, but under all legal systems I'm aware of, and that includes US, UK, EU, I guess that's my limit that I can speak to at any sort of length. The moment you stop providing service for something, your EULA is no longer valid. Like, I don't know of any court in any of those three jurisdictions that would even hear a case on this if you stop support for a game. So, this statement is, at the very least, hyperbolic. Besides being an affront to consumer rights, video games themselves are unique creative works. Okay. Like film or music, one cannot be simply substituted with another. Destroying them, it represents a creative loss for everyone involved and erases history in ways not possible in other mediums. Well, streaming services are definitely trying to give you a run for your money on this statement lately. We've actually had several TV shows and movies that have been lost to time. George Lucas with Star Wars tried to do that. The original cut of the original trilogy for Star Wars is very difficult to find now, and acquiring a copy legally is next to impossible. So this is not a strictly video game thing, though it is a more prevalent problem in video games. Agreed. But the thing they seem to be outlining here, I'm not entirely sure what this paragraph is trying to push. I had an idea of where they were going, and then they just sort of went away here. Let me try to figure that out again. This practice is effectively robbing customers of their purchases. Yes, in some cases. And makes restoration impossible. False. Besides being an affront to consumer rights, video games themselves are unique creative works. Like film or music, one cannot be simply substituted with another. Okay, yes, so they're outlining the need to protect works of art. Absolutely agree. Art preservation is, I would argue, one of the most important things that our governments need to start taking seriously. Existing laws and consumer agencies are ill-prepared to protect customers against this practice. Well, that's partially because most consumer agencies around the world are, at the very least, heavily influenced, and in the worst cases, essentially controlled by major companies. The ability for a company to destroy an item it has already sold to a customer long after the fact is not something that normally occurs in other industries. Automotive has been working on this for ages, and I love the fact that there are cars that have features that you have to pay a subscription to use. Was this actually true? Hold on. I had heard BMW had subscription for heated seats. Was this true? Thank you, AI, but I don't trust AI. The heated seat subscription was reportedly going to cost buyers $18 a month. That's amazing. You pay extra for a car that has heated seats, and then you're expected to pay $18 a month to turn the heat on those seats. It's wild. Yeah, so this is not a strictly video games problem. Let's see. With license agreements required to simply run the game, this statement doesn't make sense. Many existing consumer protections are circumvented. This statement doesn't make sense. Because the license agreement kind of ends when support ends, as far as most legal systems are concerned. Yeah, the license agreement is not required to run the game. There needs to be a delineation here between DRM and license agreement. Like, they're kind of mashing these concepts together right here. So giving them the benefit of the doubt, they're talking about DRM here. If they're talking about DRM here, then I agree with this statement. However, you didn't say that. This practice challenges the concept of ownership itself, where the customer is left with nothing after buying a game. Completely agree. This 100%. Good. I'm glad they brought that back to a reasonable point. We wish to invoke Article 17 of Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. Good, I'm glad they have the excerpt here. No one may be deprived of his or her possessions except the public interest, and in the cases under the conditions provided for by law, subject to fair compensation being paid in good time for their loss. So I can tell you just on the face of it, this is not generally applicable. So no one may be deprived of his or her possessions. Well, if you have entered an agreement where one of the termination terms is that you lose access to that possession, that's legal. You can absolutely sign away your rights to stuff. Like, this, I can almost guarantee, is in the context of the government not being allowed to just arbitrarily take your stuff. This practice deprives European unions of their property by making it so that they lose access to their product in an indeterminate arbitrary amount of time after the point of sale. We wish to see this remedied. Core of this initiative. So you need to appeal to the principle here rather than the legal term. And quoting a specific article or a section of a specific article is trying to make the legal argument You need to be making the principled one at this point. We also invoke Title 15 of the Treaty of the Functioning of the European Union. And the following articles are our justification for the Union's imperative to respond to this initiative. The EU has an obligation to promote the interests of consumers and to ensure a high level of consumer protection. To protect the health, safety, and economic interests of consumers. Okay? I'd love to know what's in that ... We may look at that. We believe this practice infringes upon or requires corrections to be commensurate with the EU's obligation. The actions taken in response to this initiative must supersede any end-user license agreements associated with the video game. I mean, they would, because, in case you missed it, all EULAs have a severability clause in terms of how the license agreement interacts with local laws. And when I say local laws, I don't mean like local government. I'm saying an EULA functions differently in the UK than it does in the US. Because the severability clause says wherever the law says something different, just we go with the law. Wherever the law doesn't contradict us, it's whatever we say. That's what a severability clause does. Let's see. The Commission, in its proposals, envisaged in paragraph 1 concerning health, safety, environmental protection, consumer protection, will take as a base a high level of protection. Within their respective powers, the European Parliament and the Council will also seek to achieve this objective. Will take as a base a high level of protection. That is possibly the most vague thing you could say there. Good job, EU. This practice undermines the high level of consumer protection that the Commission, the European Parliament, and the Council takes as the basis of law in the Union. Their objectives of establishing and maintaining the functioning of an internal market as described in section 1 of this article. Wow, there is not a lot there. Yeah, there is really not much here. And this is effectively all the members of European Parliament are going to see. If they even see it. Yeah, there's sort of a mashing of principle versus legal arguments here. And it's a very weak proposal to me. And I think they could have done a lot better. First off, they absolutely should have had a lawyer look at this and help them submit this. Yeah, and if they did have a lawyer look this over, man, you, in the US, you might have a grounds for malpractice. And let's see, what's the overview here? Initiative calls to require publishers that sell or license video games to consumers to leave said games in a functional, playable state. Yeah. Specifically, the initiative seeks to prevent the remote disabling of video games by the publishers before providing a reasonable means to continue functioning of said video games without the involvement from the side of the publisher. The initiative does not seek to acquire ownership of said video games. Yeah, so this is what we read before. Yeah, and the core problem with this initiative is it seems to be like this initiative is comprised of video game nerds like me. We know how live service works. We know how online games work. I have to assume you are intentionally leaving out that information. Because I think if it had been included, the people organizing this were worried that it would collapse their argument. Because it kind of does. They've gone far too general here. I think if this were instead an initiative to say something like banning the practice of adding unnecessary measures to video games to allow for arbitrary future date disabling, I think if you limited the scope to that, you'd have a much stronger argument. The problem here is that this applies to any game with server-based multiplayer. That's a problem. Like, one, if this were to, let's pretend that this just as is becomes the new law. As an indie developer, I am never going to touch multiplayer with a 10-foot pole. Never gonna happen. I'm never going to touch MMO with a 10-foot pole. Not gonna happen. Live service, never gonna even think about it. So all of those different models for monetization and style of game is just gone from the indie space as far as I'm concerned. I think that's a big problem. So is there a big let's just circle back and summarize. Is there a massive problem in the games industry? Yes. Does it need to be solved through some sort of legal initiative? 100%. Are these the best people to be pushing that initiative? Not based on what I'm seeing. This is... There's a much stronger case to be made here by limiting your scope, and they've not done that. Okay, so now we have a base understanding of what's going on with this petition, Stop Killing Games, or this initiative of Stop Killing Games. Let's talk just very briefly about the other major player in all this, PirateSoftware, like biggest game development streamer around. Like, love him, hate him, he's definitely the biggest around. I need to hydrate. I've been talking way too long, and my throat's starting to get scratchy. Okay, so for those who aren't aware of all the drama, PirateSoftware has come out very, very strongly against this initiative ages ago now. And does he have valid points? Yes. Has he communicated them well? No. Like, I just went through all of the documentation here, and I've broken down, like, without having to dive into all the videos of supplementary information that the lawmakers are never going to see. So, like, I don't know why it's worth analyzing. But going through what they've outlined here, and in their initiative with the European, registered with the European Union, there's massive problems here. and is actively going to detriment games development in many, many ways with how they've stated this. So, and Pirate Software has pointed a lot of that out as well. However, from what I've seen of Pirate Software, and we're going to see a little bit of this in a video I've had prepared to look through, he's gone hyper negative and just been in like scorched earth mode with this initiative. Like, just said, this is bad, it's not even worth trying to fix, just let it die. And when some group within your society has identified a real problem, it's only harmful to squash that. You at the very least need to discuss that problem. And on that same note, almost certainly the reason this initiative got the signatures it did was because of Pirate Software talking about it the way he did. It very much seems that he didn't intend that, but the controversy that was sparked by him talking about it the way he did is almost certainly what caused them to get all the signatures they needed. And, oh boy, as we've talked, this is not a great initiative to be proposed as like the starting point for where to discuss new law on this. And I think Pirate Software was in a unique position to be able to help this initiative change into a better thing that could work without all of the problems that I've outlined. But let's take some time. So for those who aren't familiar, Actman talks about various things in the games industry from time to time, and I think he generally does a solid job. And this is a at least decent video for seeing what the latest stuff is on this. So absolutely recommend you guys all go watch his video on your own, break it down yourself as well. I want to take some time to go through it slowly because there's hey there, Tyler, how's it going? But I want to take some time to go through this video because there's at least a couple problems with how it's being discussed here. And now that we have all the context of going through the official documentation, we're at least as well versed as anyone needs to be before discussing this problem. I'm doing good. We're just catching up on all of the Stop Killing Games Pirate Software drama. Because it's fun.
So, I'm going to be honest with you. I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted.
Thank you, Pirate Software. You saw this? Yeah, no, this video was great at breaking down the... I don't want to use the new terms the internet has come up with for this, but it's quite valid. The crash out of Pirate Software over this. Yeah, like... And this is something in modern political discourse that has grown to an obscene degree. This idea that you hope for the failure of your opposition. To me, that is just a purely destructive mindset. So when my guy loses in an election and your guy wins, I absolutely am hoping for the complete and total success of your guy. Because success, as far as I'm concerned, and as far as anyone should be concerned, is the betterment of the lives of the people being governed by whatever this initiative, person, whatever it is. So why would I hope for failure? Because that's just going to make my life worse. And so Pirate Software statement here. I hope you get everything you asked for and nothing that you wanted. Why? Especially someone with as big a voice as Pirate Software. This is like you are uniquely positioned to fix the problems with this initiative. You could absolutely have used all of your audience, your community, to fix these issues. And instead, you seem to have just decided, let it all burn. Oh.
Such a thing.
Previously on Stop Killing Games.
Love Ackman.
Video games is evil. From my point of view, the gamers are evil.
As much of a cartoon and caricature of the people this is, Pirate Software has absolutely turned himself into the villain on this topic. And I think he's had tons of opportunities to turn this around for himself, and I want to point those out here.
More than you are high. I thought your initiative had failed and died.
Die? No. Became.
So this is what I was talking about with Pirate Software basically causing the success of this initiative while demonizing it. Right here is kind of the peak of when Pirate Software was hammering them. And you see the result. Like, this just exploded because of him. These, by the way, these are the signatures on the petition.
Yes.
It's over, Pirate. We have the signatures. You underestimate my ego. Don't double down.
No, don't, Pirate Software, please!
Thrilling second entry.
By the way, this was a fantastic video game. Just small detour. Back when Star Wars video games were good, this was, I believe, Revenge of the Sith, right? Yeah. Dude, I loved this game. That's not what I wanted. There we go. Yeah, dude, this game was amazing. I mean, it was still like not even close to a perfect game. Had tons of flaws, but this was back in the era when licensed games were still fun. Honestly, though, this is back in the time when we still did licensed games. When was the last time we had a movie game come out? Like, what was the last movie game? Recent movie game tie-in. It's gonna be like Fortnite crossovers, isn't it? Yeah, okay, so we had Guardians of the Galaxy, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, yeah, I remember that coming out. And RoboCop Rogue City, I'm not sure I agree with that one. Like, that's more a game that's just using an old franchise. Yeah. Anyway, back to it.
We stopped killing games. But what now?
Ladies and gentlemen, hold those fists high. Drop a salute in chat. Turn on my favorite.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Like, enjoy the victory.
We stopped killing games. But what now? Can our heroes take the fight to Parliament? Can we enact sweet...
So, I know he's doing a bit, but signatures is just the first step. And I think most people understand that.
legislative changes that ensure that gamers across the world own the things they buy? Find out in the next
20 minutes or so. Yeah, probably.
Yeah, it would be really nice if that were the case. But as we outlined previously, this initiative is way broader than just that.
Because of your tireless efforts and many, many others.
Yeah, let's skip over some of this. The medal ceremony stuff isn't super relevant.
I buy, and that's it's hard to spin that. It's hard to spin that angle. Now, once again, I don't want this video to just be about drama regarding Mr. Software.
So what he's referring to there, and I cut that off, is the Crew is an example of a game being shut down fairly quickly after people bought it, and it's like one of the most blatant examples as far. Let me actually check on that. What is the relative time on this? The Crew release date. Oh. Wait, what? The Crew shutting down. I mean, okay, so maybe this isn't as cut and dry as I thought it was. Because we're talking about servers being online for 10 years, which is almost certainly several years past the point of profitability. And but Ubisoft revoked the CD keys, making it impossible to even connect, install, or authenticate the game. I mean, that's kind of irrelevant if the authentication servers are also taken down. Yeah, maybe I'm not as on the side of gamers as I thought on that one. But before I make any sort of definitive statement, I need to do a lot more research.
Eat my entire ass.
All in due time. Thank God for Helldivers 2, the true 2023 game of the year. Look at how our training has paid off. These numbers just came in fresh off the press. Our top signature earners, based on percentage and quota for that.
Oh yeah, this is still part of the what he's termed the medal ceremony. They almost killed video game.
It's important to highlight just how impressive of a grassroots movement this has become. How we all came together and managed to pull off this incredible upset win.
So he's absolutely correct here, and it's worth applauding this aspect of this scenario, which is getting enough signatures to push forward a European Union initiative is a massive feat. And it's something that a lot of legal systems don't, in modern day, give the respect it deserves. Like, your ability to petition your government is possibly the most important aspect of Western societies. Like, because if you don't have a mechanism for petitioning your government, and when I say petition your government, I'm not talking about filing a petition. I'm talking about the concept of petitioning a government, which is just your ability to question your government about things, to tell your government, this is what I want. That is so vitally important to a stable society, because every society where that is not allowed, historically speaking, has resulted in extremely violent revolutions. And that is the core mechanism by which Western societies have tried to avoid big violent revolutions.
This must be how Eli Manning feels every single day. So pat yourselves on the back, suck your...
Nope, we're gonna skip over a little bit of this because family friendly.
We have won. If you really want to visualize the success, thanks to Reddit user...
Yeah, no, this is... So this is where almost all petitions die. And this is why it's so difficult to get all the signatures you need on a petition. Like, the success or failure of a petition is usually easy to determine by the growth within the first 2 to 3 days. And based on this, this was absolutely going to fail. Until something happened here.
Sir Balanlon. Hell yeah, we're gonna stop killing games. Let's go. Yeah, keep the momentum up with what's happening.
Yes. As with all petitions. Why did it slow down? Well, because the people who are most likely to sign are the ones that are hyper focused on the initiative at the start and have been following it. And so they're also going to be the ones that sign right off the bat. And then you're just going to get the stragglers for a long while. And you just have to hope that your initial surge got you, let's say, 90% of the way, and that the stragglers can get you the extra 10. That's what you hope for with a petition.
Anybody? Hello? Help? Is anybody coming? Are we fucked? I guess this is the... Fuck, no it isn't. Worse.
Language, sir! Yeah, so content warning, guys. There's going to be some harsh language here because that's how Actman presents his stuff. And I'm not going to try and censor every single bit of that here. So just fair warning, this is more of an adult stream. And honestly, the kiddos, like the 13-year-olds that may have been watching this, they were bored out of their minds the moment I started talking European Union. They are long gone.
So back. That's the journey right there. That has been the journey. This is the Streisand effect visualized.
100% correct. And Streisand effect is probably not known by international viewers. So, the Streisand effect is named after a woman. Google, please start recommending stuff. Because I don't know how to spell her last name. Barbra Streisand. So, who is Barbra Streisand? Very, very famous actress. And where did this term, the Streisand effect, come from? It is because of her house. So, she had an issue where paparazzi were... I think that's how you spell it. So, she had an issue where paparazzi would come around and take pictures of her house. But you know, obscenely expensive house, absurd amounts of money. Let's just assume this is the house. What the house looks like isn't really relevant. But the point is, she got really upset about this and tried to get people to stop talking about her house. So one example of this was her taking legal action to get some photos taken out of some tabloids. Well, because of this, of her trying to hide her house, everyone was like, well, why is she trying to hide it? Well, now I'm interested. Like, the number of people that heard about this was amplified 10, 100, maybe 1,000-fold because she pushed back against it. And so the idea of the Streisand effect is that by trying to squash something or cover something up or hide something, you inadvertently cause it to be viewed and seen by an absurdly larger number of people. And clearly that's what happened here with Stop Killing Games.
Because we could not have done this without everyone's favorite scurvy dog, PirateSoftware.
Absolutely
Whether
true.
he intended to or not, became the villain we all needed. He became the face of the opposition to something that...
So this is something I want everyone watching to remember. He became the villain. Like, he became a villain that pushed everyone to start signing more rapidly. Keep that in mind for later.
benefits us all. And of course, the biggest thanks especially go to Ross from Accursed Farms, who made all of this possible with his tireless efforts. I hope one day he may rest. He truly might.
I'm sorry, I don't know who this person is because I haven't been watching any of the supplemental videos with the initiative.
Be the Bob Ross of gaming content creators.
People call me the Bob Ross of programming.
Yeah, that's... Excuse me. That's not something that you want to just throw out there on your own. Anyone unfamiliar, Bob Ross is like the most loved human ever. Right up there with Mr. Rogers. So, yeah.
There's 3 parts to this story: where the initiative goes from here, and what steps we take to secure our rights. There's the corporate side of things, who has...
Oh, I left out context there. So, Bob Ross had a painting show in the 90s, and I think maybe part of the 80s, that he just exuded a feeling of comfort and love in his words, how he presented himself. It was a wonderful experience to watch the man. And his TV show was painting tutorials.
Rapidly responded. That's a great sign, by the way, because a lot of these corporations, and what we'll be getting into later, it tells me
it's afraid. It's afraid!
I think a lot of video game publishers are scared shitless.
So I do love him bringing this part up. And though I think there's not... So he doesn't give any time to talking about indie developer thoughts on this, and I think that's a big miss on his part. But, I mean, Actman is a sort of entertainment news channel, so, like, he doesn't have the time to go out and investigate every aspect of this. But I think it would have been good to at least include some of the indie dev perspectives here.
By the momentum thrown behind Stop Killing Games. Remember, Ubisoft is in the middle of a lawsuit for shutting down The Crew, and a bunch of other companies have updated their EULAs, and I just remembered that apparently Anthem servers are still...
So, this is an interesting thing to bring up, that Anthem is still running, and for large companies, it's worth noting, keeping servers running is quite cheap once you own the infrastructure. And a lot of major companies at some point start owning infrastructure, and the costs become basically your electricity bill.
Running because EA wants to shut them down now. A lot of shit happening. But you know what? I think it's that time again. Everyone put on your silly pirate hat. By the way, this hat is from an old Gangplank cosplay.
I don't need to know about your cosplay history. Sorry.
With Mr. Software. Pirate, how you feeling today? How you been holding up?
I hope that your initiative gets everything you asked for, but nothing you wanted.
God. Just the dumbest thing to say there.
Why would you say such a thing? Such pettiness will mean nothing. Your path is set. By talking more shit, you are merely giving content to your haters. Okay, I can understand crashing out as a content creator, you know?
Yeah. Content creators crash out, we get it.
Every situation and the internet move on.
Really sounds like a villain.
Put up a video saying you were wrong with every situation and the internet move on. I am not.
Yeah, so here's something that I've not seen from PirateSoftware, which is just admitting fault on much of anything. And admittedly, I do not watch a ton of his content, so I don't know. Maybe there are apologies out there I'm just unaware of.
Not doing that. I don't give a fuck. Yeah, simply bend the knee and lie about how you feel, and everyone will stop bullying you. That's a great idea.
But maybe you should look at how you're feeling and seeing if that's valid. Because not all feelings are valid. Hate to break it to the internet.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, no. Eat shit.
If you had traveled far enough, rather than waiting for the echo to reach you, perhaps...
Ooh. Man. Oh, the dream of being able to lose that many subscribers.
Perhaps you would have seen it for what it was.
Pirate, man, had you just corrected yourself once people were pointing out that you misinterpreted the movement? Had you acknowledged what Stop Killing Games was really about earlier? rather than waiting 10 months to be hit with all this backlash? Perhaps.
So, as I pointed out, or I haven't actually provided evidence for this, but it's out there. Pirate Software has pointed out some of the same problems that I pointed out with Stop Killing Games, the initiative. And one issue I take with Ackman's coverage of this is it's feeling super one-sided, as if though there aren't clear problems with the initiative. And as we've discussed, there are problems. But let's see where he goes from here.
Perhaps you would have seen the situation for what it was and avoided all this unnecessary pain you've brought upon yourself. Dude is absolutely getting dogged across every corner of the internet. But this
Yeah. We beat this horse long enough. We get it. Pirate Software has made himself hated.
needs to learn how to apologize and mean it. You would not believe how positive people react when
Yeah. If he apologizes, things get better. That's not interesting to me. Like, the pure drama side of this is very boring to me. Let's see, what's his next section? Oh, the doubling down. So, Pirate Software being hyper negative is almost certainly the thing that drove that giant spike in subscriptions we saw toward the end there.
out of the way. How are you feeling, Mr. Software?
I do think that there are some people that get misled by that stuff and they get wrapped up in an emotional thing. The best thing that I can equate it to is Coney 2012.
Wait, what?
Emotional thing. The best thing that I can equate it to is Coney 2012.
The best thing I can equate it to is what? Sorry, I
Stuff,
cannot.
and they get wrapped up in an emotional thing. The best thing that I can equate it to is Coney 2012.
I cannot understand what he said there. Hold on, let me amplify my volume and see if I can.
By that stuff, and they get wrapped up in an emotional thing. The best thing that I can equate it to is Coney 2012.
I have no idea what he said. Something 2012.
God. The man is comparing Stop Killing Games to Coney 2012.
What the fuck is with this guy?
This
What is Coney 2012? What is that? What is this? Film's purpose was to make you gone. Wait, what? What is I? How did I miss this? Was to make Ugandan cult leader, war criminal, and ICC fugitive, globally known, so as to have him arrested by the end of 2012. Okay, spread virally, and the campaign was initially supported by various celebrities. Film would receive blah blah. Resolution by U.S. Senate and contribute to the African Union's decision to send troops to catch Coney. Film also called for an April 28th worldwide canvassing campaign called Cover the Night. Maybe I'm too smooth-brained for this, but I'm not seeing the parallels. The film sparked a heated controversy regarding its merits, with very differing opinions being expressed by various non-government organization workers, government and international officials, journalists. Invisible Children has come under criticism for oversimplifying the events in the. So I I'm seeing a valid parallel here. I think it's probably not the right example to use, but the initiative is definitely oversimplifying the problem here, as I outlined earlier when just reading their initiative.
Turned into like such like an internet zeitgeist thing where like everyone just like lost their mind. They're like, I gotta kill Coney, gotta kill Joseph Coney. They bought like stickers, they liked things on social media. It was like,
Yes, moral panics are a thing, and they are generally bad because you don't get a properly reasoned outcome as a result.
a big slacktivism movement.
And essentially calling them both slacktivism. Well, we actually accomplished something, okay?
So that has yet to be seen. And I think we might be seeing a little bit of the Ackman's bias here. I get the feeling that he's an active supporter of Stop Killing Games as a movement. And I think this deserved a bit more thought on why this parallel was being proposed by PirateSoftware.
I don't know what the fuck Coney 2012 ended with. Nobody's even talked about that as far as I'm concerned for like a decade. Is that why you're comparing?
Welcome back, my dude. We're watching the Ackman and providing a little more context.
Stop Killing Games to Coney 2012 because you think they're gonna end the same way. Nothing actually happens. The whole movement falls apart and the guy behind it ends up like masturbating.
Okay, we're gonna skip over some of this. Adult content warning for today. Hey there, Dolby. That's an interesting introduction for you.
Before, there have been multiple videos exposing Pirates' claims of working for Blizzard.
Oh, this is a whole thing. So I don't want to get into this whole thing about whether or not PirateSoftware is a good programmer. I don't care. I don't think that's interesting for this discussion. I just think he has the most milquetoast opinions ever. Like, nothing insightful or challenging to say. Are you saying the Actman has those opinions, or are you saying PirateSoftware has those opinions? And hey there, Kurt. Welcome. Because if you think Actman has some milquetoast opinions without a lot of depth, okay, Actman, yes, I agree. I wouldn't say most of his stuff is milquetoast, but I do agree that there's not a lot of depth and investigation, at least in this piece and a few others I've seen from him. I think he could do better. But this whole, like, going into the drama here of PirateSoftware and whether or not he's a master hacker and programmer, I don't care. Only reason he has a viewer base is because he says that people want to hear and inserts a Twitter Reddit wholesome fungus joke. So let's go ahead and skip over this section. Dog Dum Dum would have cared? No, Dog Dum Dum would not have cared about whether or not PirateSoftware is a good programmer. Like, I think he provides some good guidance to new developers.
Pirate, your thoughts on Ross and his Stop Killing Games initiative?
You also didn't want
Now we're kind of like, this horse has been dead. Stop it.
to talk to Ross. I didn't like the way that he was approaching the situation. I was very clear about that. His community went on the offensive and tried to do underhanded tactics, and
So I don't know enough to be able to talk about whether or not there were underhanded tactics. Not super relevant to whether or not the initiative is good. Because when you have a large enough community, there's going to be bad actors in it. Hate to break it to everyone, there are bad people in the world. Just how it is. Let's see. Oh, there was one piece of the Master Hacker Programmer that I did want to point out that Actman has just wrong.
Coding Jesus have both.
Yeah, where is it? There's one very important bit that he gets wrong. And that was one of my main reasons for wanting to go over this video. Oh god, I'm never gonna find it, am I? Oh no! I saw the stream of him live and I know what he hates about the initiative. Yeah, if you want to see me going over the initiative, check out the VOD afterward. At the start of stream, I went over the entire initiative and pointed out some very clear problems with it. Oh, why can't I find this? On. No! Oh, this is awful. Okay, hold on. We're just gonna try to soldier through this. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Oh no.
So I'm gonna be honest.
What? YouTube, please. Hold left click and drag the bar up. Right?
Guy is like.
I don't understand.
And coders.
Am I too dumb for this? I think I might be too dumb. Okay, so there's a point in this where he talks about the amount of code that PirateSoftware produces. Come on. Where are you? Okay, if I can't find it, then I'll just talk about it. There's a transcript. Ooh. Hey. That sounds useful. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Help! I don't know how to YouTube. Okay. Since clearly this is not working for me, I'm just going to describe what Actman says, and I'll go into why it's a misrepresentation. So, he talks about PirateSoftware's GitHub, and the fact that there's nothing publicly available on the GitHub. And Actman says that as far as he knows, GitHub is a place for developers to share their code with other developers, which is just not the case. GitHub, for anyone who hasn't been with the channel, this is where I keep my code. Think one add-on is the problem? Could be. Could be. Also could just be the browser. Um, see if we can just get the public view of my GitHub. Nope, I'm not important enough to be searchable. But then we'll just do Pirate Software. Pirate Software doesn't have any public repositories yet. Okay. If you go to my GitHub, you see the exact same thing with my name. You will see Dum Dum Make Game doesn't have any public repositories yet. Does that mean that I do not write code? Obviously not. You can see I don't want to go through the sign-in process on GitHub right now, but come on, GitKraken. Oh wait, it's been like 3 weeks since I opened GitKraken. Please don't try to update. So, as you can see, I have commits to repositories, and the remotes on these oh poop, they have their like special encrypted hyperlink. Point is, my repos are saved on GitHub. That's the main point here. And because they're private, nobody else gets to see them. And this idea that GitHub is primarily for sharing code publicly is just blatantly incorrect, because my understanding is the vast majority of revenue produced by GitHub is from major companies using them as a hosting service for their repository. GitHub revenue breakdown. Let's see. Can I get a pie chart, pretty please? I would love a pie chart. I don't care about their culture. I just want to know where the money comes from. The subscription plans, enterprise solutions. I mean, here you go, 50,000 organizations using them, and these organizations pay massive amounts of money. Revenue breakdown, growth. Yeah, so, and I'll just use my work history as an example. I've worked for 3 different major companies, one of which was a Fortune 100 company, and they all used GitHub to host their repositories. And pro tip, none of that stuff was open to the public. So, long story short, the idea that just because Pirate Software's repos are not visible here means that he's not a developer. It's not a valid point. Now, Actman also in this video, and I encourage you to go, if you're interested in deciding whether or not you like Pirate Software, I encourage you to go watch this as well. He brings up stuff like people having analyzed his code and saying it's not good. In any case, the one bit of sort of solid evidence that Actman provided here was the repos not being visible, but as I've just laid out, that's not really a valid critique, since vast majority of repos are not public on GitHub. Actually, that's something I can look up right now. What percentage of repos are private on Git? That stat might be available. They don't disclose the percentage. Yeah, okay. But, you know, another user here has 111 repositories. 65 of them are private. Point being, GitHub largely uses private or largely has private repositories. Whether it's majority, I don't know. But it is certainly a valid use for it. And apparently I've lost the ability to see the section titles. That's fun. Let's see. EA shutting down Anthem servers.
Which were still up. You notice something about this? This is written on July 3rd. That's like the same day StopKillingGames hit over 1 million signatures.
But as one trained in the Force, you know that true
Suspicious.
coincidences are rare.
It's shocking the servers lasted this long.
I mean, it's kind of true. As someone who absolutely loves Anthem as a game, it doesn't have staying power. Just because they didn't provide enough support for it. I think if EA had really committed to supporting that game and providing new content regularly, man, that would have been right up there with... I think it could have killed Destiny. Like, I think there's an argument to say that it would have taken players from Destiny enough that it could have shut Destiny down. And I include Destiny 2 in that idea. But they provided almost no support, no new content as the game went on. And the new content and events that were created were so bare bones. Man. Yeah, the end game missions were fly here, kill 5 robots. Fly over here, kill 5 animals. Fly over here, kill boss. And that just happened over and over and over and over and over again. They would sometimes throw in a puzzle here or there, but it was always basically the same puzzle of go collect object, put in waypoint. And that was it.
After careful consideration, we will be sunsetting Anthem on January 12th. That means that the game will still be playable for the next 180 days. The announcement of Anthem's servers shutting down comes as a surprise, especially considering...
Wait, what? It did not come as a surprise.
EA and BioWare effectively gave up on the title a few years ago when it canceled its previously announced redesign. Yeah, so basically they're like, well, shit, better kill it now.
And so this is something that a lot of these publishers are going to have to look at doing if laws start being proposed in the EU. I think you're going to see a lot of publishers start shutting down games very, very quickly. Because they're going to start being legally liable for these things. And depending on how the laws end up shaping up in the EU, we could start seeing just an end to live service, potentially.
This, by the way, is an incredibly good sign that the movement is shifting the table. We're stacking the chips on our side, and they're stacking their chips on theirs.
Yeah.
They're prepared for a battle, and companies like EA are going to do everything they can to minimize the damage that this movement...
So, both sides stacking their chips does not mean... Like, it means there's movement. It doesn't imply that it's good movement. That's yet to be seen.
Will have. But honestly, Anthem did have a ton of potential.
And I want to be clear, I'm not saying that it means that it's bad movement. It means we don't know.
potential. I mean, most folk got really hyped with those initial trailers, and clearly something about it spoke to gamers. It fulfilled this kind of Iron Man fantasy, but the novelty wore off really, really quickly.
So, I disagree with this analysis. I think that's the most basic response people have to any sort of game having a lot of interest and then failing. Is, well, obviously the novelty wore off. No, the problem is novelty isn't everything. So the novelty of an Iron Man MMO, I don't think that wears off. I think it's a factor of, or it's a matter of, it's not like novelty, I think everyone can agree, is not enough to sustain a game. You also have to have content. And the issue with Anthem is it just didn't have content. Like, you finish up the story, and then you just have dailies, and you get some, recycled events. That's it.
And it had a ton of issues that were just never fixed. Remember when EA fixed?
I should also mention, I believe Anthem has the ability to go and explore an open world. There's absolutely zero reason to do it. Like, you can go out and farm resources. Or you can not do that and get 10 times the resources by just doing runs of the in-game content, which is excessively repetitive. So, Anthem died, but not quite for the reasons Ackman is pointing out here.
Fixed another game? Or I should say DICE. Remember when DICE fixed that one game that we just made a video on talking about its redemption? You should have tried. What else? Ubisoft wants gamers to destroy all copies of a game once it goes offline.
So this is what I was bringing up earlier, and one of the viewers was saying that they have to have a reasonable or a verifiable reason to do this.
What a headline.
This
Ubisoft has updated its EULA to avoid potential legal issues by discontinuing support for its...
Yeah, let's see the quote. Yeah, this is just trashing on Ubisoft, which, yeah, Ubisoft is... most people agree is a bad company.
It matters. The company has fallen so low that it wants to avoid any
Here it
legal
is.
consequences by terminating users' access to products, which it aims to do sooner for many legacy titles. Look at this blurb from their EULA. You and Ubisoft.
Yeah, so... So here's a bigger excerpt. I think that's important to look at. You and Ubi ends in product in your possession. Okay, so we're missing the EULA is effective from the early of the date you purchase, download, or use the product until terminated according to its terms. Okay, that doesn't add any context.
Ubisoft may terminate this EULA at any time for any reason.
So, yes, end user license agreements. This isn't super new or unique. But as I said earlier, it does specify any reason.
This EULA will terminate automatically if you fail to comply with any of the terms and conditions of it.
So we've read license agreements over and over and over and over again on stream, and that's in all of them. Like, I know it sounds bad, and Ackman is hyping this up as if though it's a big deal, but that's in every single license agreement. The statement, if you don't comply with the things in this agreement, you violated it, and the EULA terminates. Yes, of course, obviously. Any legal agreement, if you fail to comply with the terms of the legal agreement, terminates. Pretty basic.
On termination for any reason, you must immediately...
Now this is where they jump the shark.
You must immediately uninstall the product and destroy all copies of it in your possession. Are you out of your fucking mind?
Language, Actman, language. But I completely and totally agree. So this is the shark jumping moment for Ubisoft of, if we just decide to end the EULA, you are required to delete the things you have purchased, and you receive no compensation at all. Yeah, that doesn't fly. Try that with, like, buying a shovel at Home Depot. Just good luck with that.
Can't possibly ruin my reputation anymore. Competition and my opponent is Ubisoft. This is why we need to bring
Yeah.
last piece.
Ubisoft is trash.
This is our true opposition. This coalition, video games.
So I should point out, I think Actman just showed his hand there quite a bit. Our opposition. He clearly sees himself as part of the Stop Killing Games movement, and I think he has a bit too much bias here. I want to be kind in my description of that, and I think I'm probably being a bit too light in my description there, but I want to try and be nice, because I think Actman is generally a good guy.
Europe is very opposed to Stop Killing Games. In fact, they consist of a lobby of a variety of different corporations. You can probably...
Yeah, so the fact that you essentially have a union of major corporations that are collectively lobbying to shape legislation in the European Union, like, what? How is that? That can't be allowed, right? And I want to provide a little bit of nuance here in this idea that so a lot of people have this idea that companies just shouldn't be allowed to petition the government. That's nonsense. That would mean that the moment you start a business, you lose legal rights to representation in government. That's insane. Like, so my small business, the moment I created Dum Dum Make LLC, I'm suddenly no longer allowed to have a political voice to represent the interests of my company. That's dumb. And not like Dum Dum Make Dumb. That's like actual just dumb. Like, companies are comprised of people. Those people have interests, part of which is being profitable and employing people and all that fun stuff. And those interests need to be communicated in some manner to the entities that govern them. So lobbying on its own is not bad, but this idea of a whole bunch of mega corporations pooling their resources to manipulate the government, I think that's a line that shouldn't be crossed. I saw this a lot with one company I worked for, where in that industry, and I have to, not give specifics, unfortunately, but within the industry we were in, there were basically 3 major players in the United States. And every few years, all 3 of those companies would get together to told openly, oh yeah, we put that stuff in there to squash competition. It has nothing to do with actually protecting customers or being good for customers. Yeah, it's... This whole situation, I think, is one of the big societal ills of modern day. And he is right that this group is an enemy, and I would say not just of Stop Killing Games, but of consumers.
Probably guess who's on this list. EA? Yup. Ubisoft? You better believe it.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
their
got it.
response. We appreciate the passion of our community. However, the
Oh, the responses from mega corporations is just always so tone deaf. Now so let's listen to how Ackman reads this off.
decision to discontinue online services is multifaceted, never taken lightly, and must be an option for companies when an online experience is no longer commercially viable. Guys, if we pull the plug, just get over it.
So this to me is dishonest from him. Yes, those are mega corporations that have lots of money. It doesn't mean everything they said is a lie. When a game is no longer commercially viable, you can't demand a company continue pouring money into something that isn't making money. That's just an unreasonable way to try and structure society.
Fucking bitch. We shouldn't even have
language, sir. Adult stream warning.
to guarantee the bare minimum for you. Imagine if they had a way to make old cartridges just short circuit after a period of time for like your N64, your Atari, or whatever. Imagine if like Activision and
so he's pointing out that these companies specifically would love to do this, and while obviously we're never going to know what their thoughts are on this, you can pretty much bet he's right on this one.
EA did that type of shit. In their current form, they would do it if they could. And you know why they're trying to kill all these old games?
I love what he's about to bring up. I am part of the phenomenon of what he's about to bring up. And this says everything about the modern gaming industry that anyone needs to know.
Because those are the ones we're playing.
This is impossible!
According to a study reported on
Yeah.
PC Gamer,
Holy crap.
PC gamers spend 92% of their time on older games. Well, if they're still playing the older games, maybe they're not buying the new ones.
So, I want to know where those stats come from. Because if this is just saying like 92% of gamers spent any amount of time in the past year playing older games, then yeah, that's a useless stat. Let's see where the number comes from. Hopefully they say. Yeah, and there's the other thing, Kurt. Thank you for pointing out. Please define old game. When does a game become, quote, old? The results are extrapolated from a yearly in-depth survey of 73,000 players. Okay, good sample size. Alongside data from over 10,000 games. Questions. From this, Newzoo says that the PC market is growing at a steady rate with an estimated blah blah blah. Okay. Oh boy. Oh, it's one of these data companies and it's gonna cost bajillions. Yeah, so I don't have the money to actually dig into their data. Like, I'm not gonna buy their services for this. I need you to describe the data, please. Okay. Hours on PC were spent on a game that was 6 or more years old. Further 25% of player hours were spent on games that were 2 to 5 years old. And the remaining 8% were spent on games that were less than 2 years old. Okay, this I think is a fair breakdown. So the fact that they're measuring player hours, I think that's a valid metric for this. Because if you were just saying like one way you could try to measure this would be percentage of Steam users that played a game more than 5 years old at any point in time in the last year. Well, that's going to be almost everyone. Hold on, Kurt, I'm getting there. Then, so you don't want to measure your metric like that. And you also don't want to have each player represented equally, even if you could somehow get down to a, let's pretend you could get a valid metric that was on a per player basis. Meaning like every player has an equal representation in your metric. You wouldn't want that either, because someone who's playing 10 hours a day versus someone who's playing 5 minutes a day, those are not the same in terms of spending within the market. I think the only better statistic you could get than player hours would be something like amount of money spent on games. I think that would be a better metric here for driving publisher and developer practices. But this is probably the closest you're going to get without some heavy duty number crunching. So I think they have a valid stat here. Now, let's look at the breakdown here. 67% of player hours on PC were spent on a game that was 6 or more years old. I think we would all agree, once you're older than 5 years, that's a valid category for old. Absolutely agree. Now, how are they getting that 92? They're adding in this next group. So 67, 25, 80, 92. That's how they got that stat. Further, 25% of the player hours were spent on games that were 2 to 5 years old. And Kurt, you brought up the point that, are we really going to say that a 2-year-old game is, quote, old? So we need to consider how this stat is going to be used in order to determine whether or not something is old. So the way this stat is used, because Newzoo, they market their data to big publishers. So what is a big publisher going to be using this data for predominantly? Tracking sales and seeing how to push more sales. So after 2 years, most of your sales are done. Like almost all of your sales for major releases are going to be happening within the first month. The rest are typically within the first 6 months to a year, depending on when some sales happen. You guys know how that works. So I think it is valid to say that anything 2 years old or older is, quote, old for these purposes. For figuring out, are people buying new games or are they playing the games they already own? Because that's what the publishers care about. And I think 2-year-old game, absolutely, this is people playing games they already own rather than buying the new releases. 100%. Obviously, we could split hairs here. Counter-Strike 2 only released last year, so what's it doing in this category? Yeah, I would have some questions on some of the specifics here, and I would also suggest not including these types of games. So, Fortnite, Dota 2, Roblox, League of Legends. Are they old games based on their release date? Yes. Are they games that have people actively spending more money on them on a daily basis? Yes. So I think live service games are a problem for this statistic. I think what you would want to do is break this down instead of release date, break it down by when the last major update was. Or if you didn't want to even try to define what a major update is, just when the last update was. I think you'd come up with a cleaner stat here. Because since these games are actively being updated, League of Legends, Fortnite, Roblox, and people are actively spending money with these new updates, for marketing purposes, I can't really consider it to be, quote, old games. I can't. So, I think the stat here is probably something like, let's see, that's 12, 22. Let's assume there's at least 50% more than these heavy hitters. So let's, I should include the 7% there as well. So 29. Let's say take 40% out of this stat. Well, that's still more than half of the market that you don't have access to because people prefer stuff they already own to the new, frankly, crap you're producing. So your potential market has been cut in half because you're just doing bad stuff. So while it's not as dramatic as being claimed here, it's absolutely a valid concern for the publishers, and it explains why they're reacting the way they are.
We need money. We understand that it can be disappointing for players, but when it does happen, the industry ensures that players are given fair notice of the prospective changes in
Yeah, no, I'm with Ackman on this. Like, I've had a bunch of complaints about Ackman's presentation of some of these things, but fair notice of prospective changes, that is such nonsense corpo speak for the game going away.
compliance with local consumer protection laws. Translation: we only want to do the bare minimum that we are legally required to.
Absolutely no complaints with his characterization of that, because that is 100% what that corpo speak means. Having worked in major companies, they all do this. It is, what is the absolute bare minimum I have to do in order to comply with the law? And if you put yourself in a business's shoes for a second, like pretend you're the CEO, well, of course you're going to do that. Like, do you want your customers to be happy? Yes, because that will make them spend more money. I shouldn't say make them spend more money, but if they're happy, they spend more money, right? And as far as complying with consumer protection laws, if you believe that consumer protections are not going to lead to happier and more spendy customers, then of course you don't want to have more of that.
Prospective changes equals shutting the game down. This isn't like,
yes,
oh, the servers
yes.
are going to go down for 48 hours on this date. No, this is your purchase is null and void. You can't do that. You know,
So, again, this idea that games need to exist forever, you are, depending on how this is implemented, you are going to potentially destroy online gaming in its entirety. Because You cannot force a company to support a product in perpetuity. It can't be done. I actually worked for a company that tried to do this with their versions. So they wanted to have like every single version of their software going back, I think 7 or 8 years, to be actively supported out in the wild. Meaning, if a customer bought version 2 of the software and they ran into a problem, we would release a new version 2 instead of telling them you need to upgrade to version 8. It was absolute nonsense at that company. And it baffled me that there was never a hardline stance of, no, if what you're using is, 5 years old and it doesn't work anymore, hey, if you want it to work better, get the new stuff. But I think so I have some contacts back at that company, and I believe they finally fixed their official stance on that. But the fact that they had over a decade of supporting every historical version is just baffling to me. And it's the same phenomenon that's being asked for here with, I'm working on a new project, a new game. If at any point the old game stops working, I now need to drop everything to go fix that. Even if, like, let's say I haven't touched the code in 5 years, it doesn't matter. Under the proposed initiative, I would probably be legally liable.
Look, we should really be thanking these corporations. I mean, think of how kind it is for them to let us know ahead of time that our purchase is going to be retroactively invalidated. And
So he's absolutely right that this is not a solution to the problem. This idea that, well, we gave you fair warning and so there's no problem, that's obviously invalid.
we have nothing to show for it. I love how there's no mention of, like, properly informing customers if and when their product will cease to function before they buy it. If we're buying a license and not a game, that needs to be made abundantly clear to everyone.
And here's something that I also completely agree with Ackman's representation of, is the idea that consumers need, or I want to stop saying consumers, customers need to be properly informed about what the heck they're buying.
Everyone, you should have to click a box on the Steam page that says this game might be just fucking deleted and you won't have anything to show for it. But of course, they don't want to do that.
And by the way, you don't.
So this is something that I think we may already have the laws in most countries to tackle this. I think it's going to be a matter of taking these companies to court on this. Because the idea that you are buying a game, like it's stated, you are buying it, but in the fine print it says, no, you're actually just renting it until we decide to take it away. That doesn't fly in other industries. And like, there are court rulings in other industries that have like sorted this out. And I think it's a proper venue here is just filing lawsuits. And if the lawsuits fail, then you go the route of changing laws. But I'm convinced we already have laws that cover a lot of this. Actually, that's a question. Lawsuits over DRM game shutdown. I wonder if there's an example of this floating out there. I think a class action lawsuit may be appropriate here. Yeah, this person's asking about it. So maybe this is the first case really that's going to try this. And one aspect of the US legal system that people need to be aware of is the laws on paper mean almost nothing. What a law actually is doesn't get determined until it's challenged in a court of law. So you can go in your state, like run for state legislature, you can propose a law, you can have the legislators vote on it, and you can get it passed and signed by the governor. And now that law is in effect and it governs the people, except not actually. Because it's in effect until someone violating it decides to challenge it. But when someone decides to challenge it, that law now is like in a bubble, and a judge gets to decide whether it gets to become like a real law, and there isn't. So this is how case law works, so what I'm trying to break down. So it's a law in the books, but we don't know whether or not it's going to hold up in court yet. And until it does hold up in court, it's only so valid. And so this lawsuit may be the suit that determines whether or not this has been a violation of the law that already exists. And I think it's important to have lawsuits on these things. I think it's absolutely important to challenge these things because that's how you shape actual applicable law in the United States. And similarly in the UK. Man, I'm not used to talking this much straight. Excuse me. All right, let's go ahead and finish this up.
You don't want to do that either. You think you do, but you don't.
Private servers are not.
Also, just a pro tip to any developer, publisher, business owner, directly telling your customers what they do or don't want is a mistake. Even if you are right, because there are instances where customers are dumb. It happens. And they're going to ask for things that the end result of what they've asked for, they will not like. But communicating to your customers the way that man just did, that's never going to work.
Not always a viable alternative option for players, as the protections we put in place to secure players' data, remove illegal content, and combat unsafe community content would not exist and would leave rights holders liable.
So here's something. Let's see how he responds to this, but I can almost guarantee he's wrong on this one for a very specific reason.
Rights holders? Like who? If you're abandoning the game and it's turning into vaporware, then nobody really owns it.
So, this is something Actman doesn't know about the legal system and about copyright law. And I would encourage everyone to read up on this because this informs so many legal actions you see. So, how can I look this up? International copyright law requirement to defend copyright. relies on a system of treaties and national laws that establish minimum standards of copyright protection. It can potentially be protected in other countries through international agreements like the Berne Convention. No. Okay, so we've talked about it before as an anecdote with Phantasy Star Online 2. Within the context of international copyright courts, you are required to defend your copyright, because if you are unwilling to defend your copyright, then the assumption of the court is that you don't care to keep it, so you can lose it. So this is why private servers have to be challenged. And one way to fix the whole private server issue would be just to have official licensed private servers. That's simple. You put together a document that says, okay, we're officially licensing you to do what you want with your private server, but at the same time, we make no claims on the quality of your private server. Basic thing like that would fix the whole issue. And you could even put in there, we reserve the right to pull this license at any time for any or no reason. Fine. This would allow, going that route would allow companies to, within the context of international copyright courts and law, allow people to use licensable content without having, and still being able to keep their copyright on something. So we talked earlier about Phantasy Star Online and the private servers coming about with that. They had to actively seek to shut down private servers at the time. And you see this also with World of Warcraft. It seems like some private servers have found a legal gray area to not be actively pursued. And I need to do more research to figure out how that's come about. And it may literally just be that the international courts are kind of ignoring it. But like with Phantasy Star Online 1, the potential danger for Sega within international copyright is if someone ever tries to produce a new Phantasy Star Online game, or a private server that is monetized in a way that Sega doesn't like, they would have a lot of trouble going after them within any sort of international court without also going after the current private servers that are out there. Because that new company or group or individual that is producing that game that they want to shut down, when it gets before a court, that person's going to say, well, then why weren't you going after this obvious copyright infringement? And the courts are going to say, well, yeah, why are you targeting this person and not that person? Get out of my courtroom. Obviously, I am not a lawyer. I am a hamster on the internet. Do not take any of this as legal advice. This is me attempting to break down and understand why these companies are doing what they're doing. And also provide some added context to the, let's call it, partial research of
You're
Ackman.
relinquishing your legal responsibilities to it. Am I wrong? Am I getting something mixed up in the translation?
Yes.
Isn't that how it would work?
Nope.
Clearly you don't care if there's an unsafe community if you're just willing to completely abandon it all. In addition,
so part of the problem here that I didn't cover, so there's the issue of potentially losing your copyright to all of it. So like in the case of Phantasy Star Online 1, them not challenging copyright consistently could even be construed as grounds of yielding copyright to Phantasy Star as a franchise. And that's why you'll see companies like Nintendo be so hyper aggressive about shutting down fan projects. Like, Nintendo recognizes the risk here to them, and that's why they are so vigilant about shutting down these projects. Like, even ROM hacks. They're extremely scared of ROM hacks. Because if they don't consistently try to shut down ROM hacks, then if they were to target only a specific one, or someone started to infringe on their copyrights in some other way that's actually harming them as a business, that other infringement could defend itself by saying, but you didn't go after all these other projects. You're only going after us because we were successful. It has nothing to do with you actually wanting to protect your copyright. That would be the legal argument. That's why Nintendo goes after these things so harshly. Now, don't worry, chat. We will get to Nintendo and their shenanigans very, very soon.
In many
all right, the liability issue here with data security and whatnot. There is a valid concern that if I produce a game and I stop supporting it, and let's say I just release the source code, and then someone out there takes that game and turns it into malware, there is an open question of, am I liable for that? As far as I know, that hasn't been tested in a court of law anywhere. And I think there is a very valid concern that the original developer could become liable if their game or whatever is used maliciously later. There is a potential argument there.
Titles are designed from the ground up to be online only. In effect, these proposals would curtail developer choice by making these games prohibitively expensive to create.
So, for major companies, no. For indie developers, very, very possibly.
As if they're not already. This is the problem with the video game industry. All these
Yeah, so this is something that Ackman has a blind spot on. He sees the game industry, and in a lot of these conversations, as being predominantly AAA developers. But that's not the industry that exists anymore. I would actually be curious to know, and maybe I can find that out real quick. What percentage of Steam revenue is from the title? %. There you go. Half of the industry is indie games. And like 48% is a massive blind spot in this conversation as far as Ackman is concerned. I think he generally does a pretty good job. I think, though, that this is one space where he dropped the ball a bit.
major corporations think, oh, well, every game, we're not going to invest in something unless we put like $100 million, $50 million into it, and it becomes the next Fortnite. Games are prohibitively expensive to create because you have people in charge that don't know how to manage money. Concord burned through like 500 million.
So this is also excessively true of big developers, and a big part of what I'm working on in developing my game is figuring out where to reduce costs. Like, my game is going to be put together for roughly $100,000 by my current estimates. And though it's worth noting, that's a lot of money. And the way a lot of indie developers measure this, they exclude things like living expenses and whatnot. And I don't think that's a valid way to calculate expenses for producing a video game. I think your time and the amount you would be paying yourself for that time needs to be factored in. Like, games are expensive to make. Absolutely. You're generally not producing a game for a few $100. It's not going to happen. At least not one that's going to have any sort of complexity to it. And this whole statement about big developers not knowing, or big publishers not knowing how to manage money better, 100%.
And how? The Battlefront collection was like 60 gigabytes bigger than the 2 base games and had less content in it. Fix your damn game.
So, games having less content being larger space, we all know that the vast majority of the disk space is down to assets and asset fidelity. So, it's just not a valid comparison.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think we're going to call it there. Rest assured, we have stopped killing games, but only momentarily.
Just, you haven't, though. But yeah, that's where I'm going to cut it on that one. Thank you, Actman, for covering this. I think it's very valuable for framing some of the context around the conversation here, though I do think that he misses the mark on some of the technical stuff and having some blind spots in the market in general, specifically around indie developers. I think he's missing that. And that's part of what PirateSoftware honed in on, because there's potentially massive expenses that could be put onto indie developers. And depending on how these laws are put into place, run the risk, a very valid risk, of destroying indie game development. Do I think they will? Probably not. But it's still a valid concern that there's a risk here. All right. So, that is the Stop Killing Games movement, initiative, controversy, whole bit. There's definitely more context to be had there. There's a whole bunch of supplementary videos where the people who are behind Stop Killing Games have explained what they're looking to do in more detail. But that, since that stuff isn't being communicated to the European Union, I don't really care about it. Like, you can say all the nice stuff you want in the unofficial documentation, but if the members of parliament are never seeing that, then it doesn't matter. And the stuff that is being submitted right now has massive problems that we talked about. And anyone watching this, tell me where I'm wrong. I promise one thing in talking about these things. I will not be so arrogant as to think that I have it all right. I almost certainly have made mistakes here. I just hope that I provided a little more information, a little more context that was missing from the analysis I've been seeing on it. So, let's lose all this for now. And the next topic I want to cover briefly is the Pokemon Nintendo Palworld lawsuit patent stuff that's been going on lately. But before we do that, I need a break. Let's take a minute to do some dailies and chill, because that was intense. And I need to hydrate. Ugh. Yep, so the quote from PirateSoftware of, "I hope you get everything you ask for and nothing you want." I'm going to put forward the opposite. I hope you get almost nothing you've asked for, and at the same time get everything you want. Stop Killing Games. That's what I want for you. Because a lot of the stuff you've asked for, as you've asked for it, is potentially awful. So I hope you don't get those things. But at the same time, the whole hope of protecting property of customers, I absolutely hope you can get that. This is one, like, I have a lot of problems with European law and the European Union and how they handle things, but their consumer protection stuff in many, many cases is miles ahead of other countries. Now, obvious, like I was saying, they get a lot wrong. But things like data protection. I can't remember what the name is, but there's a data protection thing that any company that works that provides services to EU citizens, they have to comply with certain standards. And one of them is, if a customer asks you to delete their data that you have on them, you have to do it. I think that's great. I do, however, think that it overreaches in a few areas. For example, if your data has been aggregated with others and obfuscated so that it's not identifiable to you, I don't agree that you should be able to ask that it's deleted. I just don't agree with that. Partially because it would be impossible to do that. And I think that's one area that hasn't been challenged because there's no real way to challenge it. So, and this gets into a separate point about, let's go ahead and get some background music going. Oh, wait. I need to turn that down. Woo! That was about to blast you guys' eardrums. Ooh, good. I did not deafen my entire audience today. Good. But what I started getting into there was there's a distinction between what a law should do and what a law can do. So in the example there of, I don't think that law should be able to require, like, I don't think it's valid to require a company to delete obfuscated data. And what that means is just making sure there's no information to link it back to you as an individual. This is extremely commonly done with medical data. That's probably where it's most applicable. When a company wants to collect medical data, aggregate it, and use that data for informing product development and things like that, I don't agree that it should be valid for a customer in that case to say, I want you to delete my data even though you have no way of knowing that it's my data anymore. And while the law certainly says that a customer can do that, because it's impossible to track that because it's been obfuscated, you also can't sue a company for violating that because there's no way to prove it. And I have mixed feelings about laws that are considered valid because they practically can't be enforced in ways that they shouldn't be enforced. I don't know if that makes any sense. I'm struggling to communicate this point. How long are we going to compile these shaders? But the end result there is, I think laws need to generally be more specific than a lot of what is talked about. And in many cases, laws are written very specific. I think that's good. As we talked about earlier, vagueness is one grounds within English common law, and common law is applied in the United States. It is grounds for invalidating a law, where a judge can say, sorry, this is too vague. It's no longer applicable to anyone. Ow. Just a second, guys. Let me put the Spirit back screen over this. Almost done. Almost done. I promise. Yes, I agree. Let me log in. Ah! Okay. We're back. Sorry about that. So, yeah, and honestly, I wish some YouTube lawyers would pick up these topics more than they do, because I have a certain amount of knowledge of the law that is largely insufficient. And I've tried to make sure to only speak to as much as I understand. But I would love to find someone from the European Union that practices law there and could speak to some of these and say, oh no, this is how this works in the EU. This is why these laws are written this way. And this is because maybe it's just the case that there's a valid reason for all the stuff in that initiative that doesn't make sense to me. Now, the contradictions, that doesn't fly anywhere. But there may be reasons that I'm just unaware of for why things are stated so vaguely there. Maybe initiatives submitted to European Union need to be vague. Maybe that's part of the strength in that legal system, and I'm just unaware. But from what I've seen of European Union court rulings, generally vagueness works against you in terms of protecting, trying to use the law against someone. If it's too vague, you don't get to use it. But my knowledge of... Oh, wow, frame rate. Dude, why am I losing frames today? Hold on, hold on. All fine. Okay. Do I have something up that might be causing this? No, I just have my normal stuff. I'm gonna close this just in case. Okay. And what is this? So in Wuwa, we have a new region. Very, very cool. And this thing I did this yesterday, and it didn't seem like something to be done daily. Clearly it is. Well, let's just spam attacks and fight through the frames. I can't see a dang thing. Well, this is certainly a way to collect echoes fast. Woo. You good? So, is this just something you're supposed to do every day now, or? Not entirely sure what the point of doing this every day would be, because these are not high demand echoes. But I gotta be right back, guys. Just a minute. Hello, chat. I am back. There we go. Let's see, what are we gonna grind today? I don't have weekly materials, so I guess weapons. Even though I'm not using like 90% of these. It's for collection purposes, I guess. Okay. Go burn our weight plates here. Yeah, long story short, on the Stop Killing Games initiative, as a indie developer, it worries me. There's some aspects of that that could be very, very bad for me and my company. Because depending on what the overhead is to meet the requirements, maybe I don't sell my games in Europe. That's entirely possible. But it's probably the case that my intended business practices will meet their requirements anyway. Like, one idea I've been ruminating on is this idea of, after a certain amount of time after a game of mine releases, I release the source code. Now, I need to talk with a lawyer about what the possible ramifications of that are, because it's very possible doing that could open me up to losing various property rights or intellectual property rights more broadly than I think it would. So there's potential problems there, but that's like, you know, years and years down the line from right now, so I don't need to worry about it too much at this stage. But then again, maybe the laws that they end up implementing based on this initiative will be way more aggressive than I'm thinking. And if that happens, I need to at least be ready for the idea that I won't sell in the EU. Clearly the new region is a bit more taxing on the system. And once we finish wave plates, I'll cover briefly what the scope of the new region is. It's not all that interesting to me. But I did finish all of the new content, 100%ing it offline, partially because it just would not have been that interesting to show on stream. Come on! Man, I was planning on talking about these Stop Killing Games drama after an hour and a half. And we're past the 3-hour mark. Turns out I'm really bad at planning how long things are going to take on stream. Okay, daily's done. Events, do we have anything? That survey. What's that? Okay, this thing is a permanent event, and I've still got over a month to try and get these temporary rewards. Yeah, one thing that's very annoying in this event is this one. Oh, wait. Yeah, so this requirement triggers synergy burst of 8 different bonds. I have no way of seeing which ones I've already done, as far as I know. Luckily, I have 2 here, separate requirements, that are going to let me effectively check this. Because once I meet one of these, I'll almost certainly be meeting one of the 8 here. Unless, of course, I triggered a synergy burst with one of those 2 without getting them up to level 4, which is possible within this event. This other one, I have no idea. I'll look at it another time. But I don't love this event. It takes so long. It's like a half hour to do a single run, which I think is just unacceptable. What's this? Oh, this is the go look at the pretty scenery event. We've had that for almost all the region. Actually, because they did some retroactively, I guess we've had that for all regions now. Any weeklies I want to grab real quick. Asset Field Overlord. Fine. Yeah, let's go ahead and do some weekly challenge stuff. Like, I've already done my weekly limit, but I can at least get that objective. What's a quick and easy one? Rob? Yeah, let's do this guy. Won't get any rewards for it, but at least I can finish the weekly objective. Let's just drop that. Because I'm not getting rewards anyway, so no reason to do the hardest one. Form one down! Come on, buddy. Easy peasy. Let's make sure that counted, though. Yes.
The night's challenge has arrived.
Come on. Easy. Okay. Nope, that's not what I wanted.
The night's challenge has arrived.
Let me out. Over the next 2 days, we do our like normal schedule. I'll be able to finish up a bunch of those weeklies. Oh, there is a... Oh, right. I'm gonna describe the new area anyway. Come on. You can do it. There we go. What? Happened. So with new content releases in this game, there's what I'm going to call major regions and minor regions. Major regions are going to be places like Mount Firmament. Big open world, go where you want, explore, finish some objectives around the place. Same as for what's region? Renacita. Almost certainly said that wrong. Major region, absolutely. Bare Waters. I'm gonna call this area a major region. However, the map that they added where are you? the Vault Underground, I'm going to term that a minor area. So these are places that you have very limited exploration. You travel kind of on a path going through this area, and you don't get to stray from it. So you have, like with the Vault Underground, you entered from some direction, I don't remember where. And then you hit a building, and you explore that building. Then you get on another path to a new building, you explore that building, and repeat. This latest content update is very much a minor region. And it's kind of composed of a few different small regions. Like this one was very much a follow the path. Get to the next area. This is another follow the path. Another follow the path. And this one, technically you're following a path. And then just a boss room. So there's not a whole lot of exploring to be done in these. I would not term it open world. And I generally found it to be lackluster. Like with a lot of the content, you're restricted to using Rover, which I think you guys know I hate using Rover. But we have our first, I'm not going to make the mistake that a lot of YouTubers made of saying first character of this type. We have our first 5-star summoner character. As far as I'm aware, this is the first one that summons. She's kind of neat. We can go ahead and do the yes, to show her off a little bit. One character I'd be interested in pairing her with is Cappuccino, because they both have something in common. They can fight while being off field. So let me build up her gauge real quick. Okay, charge attack to initiate this. And go into her burst. So one option is I control this myself. And it is quite effective. Or I can swap characters. And so while I'm attacking, she will also attack. Now, I don't know how to use any of these other characters, so I'm going to be awful here. But she's kind of neat. She is not a character I'm planning to pull for. I don't think she meets any of the needs of what I'm looking for on my teams. But first summoner, very cool. Or first 5-star summoner, I should say. Unless you want to count what's her name? Yinlin. You could maybe count Yinlin as a summoner, though I don't think so. Yinlin? That's not right. Yunjin? What is her name? I haven't used her in so long I forgot who she is. Yinlin. Okay, I had it right the first time. Now I want to know who the heck is Yunjin? Because I think that's another character in one of the games I'm playing. Anyway. There you go. That's the new content. By and large. Do I have anything else I need to be doing? No. Okay. This story is going to be a lot shorter because there's just not much to know about from an English speaker's perspective because all the court filings and stuff are in Japanese. So not a whole lot I can do with that. And sorry, chat, I'm not going to go learn Japanese just to read this lawfare. But let's go back to the basics of what has been going on. We need to put together a timeline. So, Palworld Early Access Release Date. January 19th, 2024, so year and a half ago. Nintendo patent on writable mounts. Mounts that can both fly and walk. Yeah. Let's see if Google has a translation for this. Oh no! I would really like to know when this was filed for. Original filing date. And AI may be able to help me out here. Okay. So, however, this patent is derived from an earlier application filed on 2nd, 2021. Well, first off, let's talk about what this patent supposedly is. This isn't going to let me view it without signing in, is it? Ah! Garbage. Let me see about doing this on different browser. Okay. Really like to have this in dark mode. Let me see something real quick. Oh. Apparently I can view this without being signed in. Or not. What? Ugh. Try this. Dumdum at dumdum. Just a second, guys. Don't need you even knowing the length of my password, much less more details. And I don't. Good. Yep. Let me view the patent. So, classification: computing the motion of game characters with respect to other game characters, game objects or elements of the game scene, for simulating the behavior of a group of virtual soldiers, or for pathfinding. Okay, that's all classification stuff. That's not the specifics that they are patenting. One thing that's very weird is that they're including mock-ups and schematics for the Switch. But then they are providing, like, is this a hardware patent or is this a software patent? Because it's certainly not going to be both, I promise you. Okay. Here we go. This is the relevant part, I believe. When one of a plurality of types of writable characters that the player character can ride is selected from among the characters owned by the player character, and a writable instruction is given, the player character is made to ride the selectable writable character and made movable. You push forward. Mount go forward, is what that says. When a first operation input is performed while the player character is in the air, the character is caused to ride on an airborne writable character among the writable characters. Mount in air, move where press. There you go, caveman speak for what this is saying. Which is capable of moving in the air, to be in a state where the player character is capable of moving in the air. The game program for moving the player character riding on the aerial riding character in the air based on the operation. Now, I should mention a vast majority of why this sounds so weird is because it's translated from Japanese. Just be aware of that. This is not actually how it would sound if you were a native Japanese speaker reading it in Japanese. Aerial stuff. Game program, according to Claim 1, further comprising a step of causing the predetermined damage to be inflicted on the player character when the player character falls to the ground. Causing the player character to capture another character and cause the captured character to become the owned character. So, part of what they're trying to patent here is the concept of catching a Pokemon. Guess what? Humans in real life have captured animals and raised them. You can't patent that concept. Sorry, Nintendo. But the Japanese Patent Office granted this. I'm not finding it right now. But other much more educated people than me have broken this down, and the big part that is in the major lawsuit happening right now is the ability to transition between ground and flying animations for a mount. The big problem with this patent is MMOs have been doing that for ages, even before the supposed original filing date. So, like, this filing date if I even were to believe it, is we got March of last year. Okay, well that's 2 days after Palworld's game came out. Or what did I just say? 2 months after Palworld came out. Okay, so this obviously would be invalid if the courts were being reasonable. However, it seems like they're trying to push this 2021 date, which is a different document. Yeah, so one, I think that putting the schematics here is highly manipulative, and because it's not relevant to what's being patented. And it, like, this is how you trick a patent official into approving something because they don't understand what's being talked about. And these are actually really useful for figuring out what's being patented. So, character riding a horse. Pretty sure you can't patent that one. Character hanging on to a bird. I mean, one, that physically happens in the animal kingdom in a few different instances. Two, we've had folklore about riding birds since we saw birds. Nintendo, hate to break it to you, this is not an original idea. Oh look, riding a fish. Hate to break it to you, Nintendo. That's existed long before you did. A mount climbing a wall or a rock. Nope. In fact, people ride horses up mountains. And where is... Yeah, so this is where they're drawing visuals to represent switching from the different modes of transportation and trying to say that they are patenting that. So like transitioning from flying to climbing, transitioning from riding to climbing, like it's nutty that to me that they're trying to patent that. And with these flowcharts trying to say like, oh, this is a unique thing that we're patenting the transition between these states. When video games have had this for ages, like World of Warcraft, first flying mountain. First was Griffin. Griffin Police 8. I don't want to trust the AI answer here. Count. Will you tell me when the first one came out? Pretty please. Usually these wikis have... Here we go. 2007 it was added. So this was a mount that was able to transition between flying and walking animations. 2007. Your earliest potential claim on this is in 2021. Sorry, Nintendo, this doesn't fly. And it's very, very telling that Nintendo is not submitting any of the lawsuits they currently have against Palworld. They're not submitting them in the US. Because for this reason, it wouldn't fly in the US. They're not submitting in the UK, because for the reason I just outlined, it would not fly in the UK. They're not submitting in the EU, for the same reason. they're submitting in Japan because, for whatever reason, there seems to be, and I don't know enough about their legal system to know for sure this is what's going on, but there seems to be favoritism toward Nintendo as a company. That is my gut feel. I have no direct evidence of this. Please no sue me, Japan. Please no sue me, Nintendo. I don't know, but it smells fishy. That's what I'll say. So, Nintendo has a lawsuit against Palworld using this patent. Now, this has been going on. Like, when was the first filed? Lawsuit, original filing date against Pocket Pay. Pocket Pair has active. No. So this is a talking point that went around for a while, that because Pocket Pair removed the mechanics that Nintendo had patented, that they were admitting guilt or something, which, as far as my understanding, is not the case. And part of the reason you would do this is to prevent Nintendo from filing additional claims against you in other jurisdictions, and then just, trying to bleed you dry with lawfare. So at the very least, we know this was being talked about quite a while ago, so 10 months ago at the very least. Nintendo filing for amendment. The latest big development, though, is Nintendo is filing to amend the patent that they are actively using to sue Pocket Pair. When did they first do this? In February 2025, Nintendo attorney requested an interview. Patent examiner to defend the remaining claims. For a system that allows mounts to be switched seamlessly in real time. Interesting. So, December 2024, the USPTO rejected 32 of 33 claims in application number that for a system that allows mounts to switch seamlessly in real time. So, at least in the US, their attempt to patent all these mechanics just was squashed. Like, you don't get to do that. I'm a little curious what piece of this succeeded. But I'm not going to be able to find out from this, am I? For a system that allows mounts to be switched seamlessly in real time. Except that's already, like, so here's something in the US copyright system, and I had to look into this for my company. Part of how this works in the US is anyone can file for a review of these patents while providing additional information. So, for example, this whole seamlessly switching mounts in real time, all I have to do, I can get this overturned by submitting an application to the patent office saying, like, there's a bunch more legalese that goes with it, but essentially what I'd say is, hey, this game did this back in 2007, so this isn't a valid patent. And then some agent would be assigned to the case, they'd review it, and almost certainly in this case, they go, oh, well, yeah, this is obviously invalid. Bye, and the patent goes away. In Japan, that doesn't seem to be the case. Like, I guess pre-existing works is not an immediate defense against a patent case in Japan. I don't know patent law, I can't help you out there. So at the same time, Nintendo submitted an amendment request for Japanese patent blah blah blah, which also concerned real-time mount switching mechanics. The Japan Patent Office approved the amendment, which does not introduce new technical subject matter, but rather reformulates the content using longer, more detailed language. While Nintendo has not yet taken legal action in the United States, the registration of these patents suggests that it is a possibility. The company's strategy will likely depend on the outcome of the pending USPTO applications. So yeah, Pocket Pair is fighting this. They're doing the normal legal defense of I'm not violating this thing, but even if I am violating it, it's not valid. This is a very, very normal thing when filing a defense against something. You make the defense that you're not actually doing what the other person says you're doing. That's extremely common up front. You just say, no, that's just not true. Second, you say, even if it was true, it's not valid because of, and then you just sort of throw all of the strong reasons you have against it. You want to make sure to exclude weak reasons that you might have. But there you go. Don't want to know about jet lag. Get out of here. New anti-Palworld patent uses unusual language. Oh yeah, and part of the problem here is people are using Google translated versions of these documents to see what they say. This claim, which describes the conditions of triggering the ride switching implementation, includes a provision that it works in the air even when a non-flying mount is selected. So, in English, the phrase even when doesn't make sense in a patent. But honestly, in this context, it seems fine to me, and so people are really going after the specific phrasing in the amendment. I don't see that as super valid. The thing I see as more valid is these amendments are being filed for midstream of an active lawsuit. That strikes me as shenanigans. Like, you're going to say, okay, here's my patent. They're infringing it. And so I'm suing them based on their infringement of this patent, even though I'm actively trying to change this patent into something else. Now, regardless of how small the amendment is, it's still an admission that this is not my patent. Like, the current version is not correct in some way. And to me, and this would apply in US, UK, and most European cases I've looked at that are similar, if you're trying to file for a change like this, any cases you have ongoing get thrown out basically immediately. because whatever claim you have made about an infringement cannot be accurately reviewed against the yet to be seen version of the document. And so there could be a ruling on the current version that a week later becomes invalidated. That's why you don't do this. But Japanese courts are allowing it for some reason. And it's if I were a judge, I would be saying, what the hell are you doing, Nintendo? That's what I'd be doing. Because it seems to be an admission that, to me, they're playing a game. They are saying, okay, we're suing you, and just in case that patent isn't good enough, we're gonna make it even better. Like, we didn't do a good enough job filing our patent, so let's do a better job. It strikes me as odd. And even if the change is very, very minor, like having more specific language, in my mind, that doesn't change the fact that you are modifying this midstream, and that suggests to me very strongly that you don't believe that your patent would hold. And if your patent wouldn't hold, then it shouldn't hold. If that makes any sort of sense. Like, a patent needs to be solid in order to be defendable. And if you're changing it, you're admitting it's not solid. Therefore, it, like, descriptively, you don't think it's defendable. Prescriptively, I'm saying because of that, it should not be defendable. Or it should not be defended. And I think it's becoming more and more likely. Also, I love how they're still bringing up the AI generated inventions. People are trying to I don't think this article is doing it, but trying to rope in copyright stuff, which is not what this is about. Especially because in Japan, copyright law is quite permissive. Like, fan-created versions of active intellectual properties, like actively sold products, is largely allowed there. Not necessarily legally, but culturally. So, for example, fan fiction is very, very big in Japan. And while publishers of various products have the legal right to shut down fanfiction stuff there, they know not to, because the culture says it's fine. And this is a big distinction between most Western law and Japan. In Japan, the actual law is controlled in some regards by the cultural norms. Whereas in places like the United States, the law is the law, or at least the law is whatever a judge says the law is. The fact that culture doesn't agree with it is totally irrelevant. But I based on this move alone, I think Nintendo could very much risk losing their patent on this. And I should be clear, I hope they do. I don't think they deserve to have this patent. But we'll see. That said, worst case scenario for Pocket Pair, they just pack up and move to another country. Because this whole shenanigans going on in Japan, and the fact that they're fighting it in Japan, from my perspective, this is Pocket Pair saying, hey, we like our country. We want to fix this problem in our country. However, if they were to just move their operations to the US, all this disappears. they might not be able to sell their game in Japan, because even if they were to lose in Japan, they would lose the ability to sell in Japan, but move your operations to the US. Oh look, you can sell worldwide again. Because these shenanigans do not hold up in most Western courts. I'm not going to say Nintendo wouldn't try, but it almost certainly is not going to hold up here. So, and that's part of why they almost certainly haven't filed any cases here, even though they are trying to file patents. But I don't see all that holding, and I think this is an instance where a company as big as Nintendo needs to get punched in the nose. They need to understand that they're not allowed to do this. Like, just because you have a lot of money does not mean you should be able to bully other companies like this. And it just seems very cut and dry to me from a principle stance. Legal stance, I can't really say a whole lot because Japanese courts, Japanese laws, I know next to nothing about that. But as far as principle, this is just so obviously and blatantly wrong of Nintendo to be doing this to another company that I don't see how anyone can be on Nintendo's side anymore. And by and large, people aren't on Nintendo's side. Like, people are loving Pocket Pair, and that's just sort of where things are settled. I'm sure there's still some people clamoring about the, what is it? Anubis looks just like Lucario. And, like, we've talked about the copyright claims before, and, like, there's a reason Nintendo hasn't pursued copyright suits against Pocket Pair, because they know there's no leg to stand on. There was maybe one instance of a copyright violation, but in that instance, Pocket Pair never released that PAL. So, yeah, as far as copyright, there's nothing here. As far as patent, it's gonna come down to Japan, Japanese courts. We'll see. I very, very much hope that Nintendo fails in this, because this is going to bring about a sort of dark age in Japanese game development if Nintendo succeeds. Because they're patenting game mechanics with this, which, as far as most of the world is concerned, you shouldn't be able to do. And in a lot of the world, you can't do. Because it's very, very hard to argue that you came up with this uniquely. Because a lot of legal systems say that it can't be an obvious evolution of the previous things. Like, it can't be a trivial advancement. It has to be something truly novel. But Japan's got whole different standards. I don't know what they are. I can't speak to that. Hopefully Nintendo loses this, because the consequences, like I said, with the dark age of development, all Japanese companies, if Nintendo succeeds, are going to start patenting everything they can as fast as possible. And I don't blame them, because if they don't patent things, like even mechanics that they've had in their games, Nintendo's going to go and patent the stuff that they already do. So all of these companies are going to have to start patenting everything defensively, which is like, hi Grind Sultan. We are talking about the games industry. I am a gaming company. There is, like, this is highly relevant. And I believe I put Rumble in just chatting. If Rumble decided to not put it in just chatting, yeah, no, I'm in just chatting and gaming. Like, calm down. It's supposed to be only just chatting, but Rumble decided to include both for some reason. Anyway, point being, this is very, very relevant to gaming. But yeah, I definitely worry that if they were to succeed, all the companies are going to be defensively filing for patents so that Nintendo can't steal their stuff using the patent office. But that's all I've got on that topic. Let's see, we covered the Pirate Software stuff. Or still the Stop Killing Games, we covered that. Covered this drama. There's no other drama I know of. Here, I think that's where we should call it. Not need that anymore. But tomorrow, gonna get back into game dev per usual. And I'm sure Grind Sultan's gonna be very mad at me for showing game development as well. Very, very mad at me. That's okay. I will be back into game development, normal schedule, and yeah, should be getting reasonably close this week to having character customization, like in a functional state. That's my hope anyway. Cool. Anywho, folks, thank you so much for joining. I hope you had fun. I hope you learned something. If you did, please give the video a share. Maybe you know someone that wants to learn about game dev and, in today's case, the gaming industry along with us. And also an extra special thank you to my supporters over on Ko-fi. Thank you so, so much. Yeah, that'll do it. Above all, guys, I hope y'all have a wonderful day. Take care, everyone.